The Neil Diamond Musical, A Beautiful Noise, the uplifting true story, featuring all the songs you love from his Grammy Award-winning career. October 21st through 26th at Des Moines Civic Center. On sale at dmpa.org.
I'm Chris Williams from Cyclone Fanatic, and a proud Iowa State graduate from the class of 2007. No one shows up like Iowa State fans. And Cyclones support Cyclones on and off the field. Your gift can provide scholarships to students, fund groundbreaking research. We could even drum up opportunities for the marching band. Visit MoveWhatMatters.com to learn how you can make an impact today.
What is up? Welcome to the Beat Reporters here on Thursday, October 23rd. I'm Jake Brend, joined by Rob Gray of Cyclone Fanatic and the Cedar Rapids Gazette, along with Ben Hutchens of the Quad City Times. Happy game week, gentlemen.
Happy game week to you as well.
Is it just me or does it feel like it's been a month?
It kind of does.
Like we went to Cincinnati, but that feels like a fever dream. So it feels like a month since I've covered a game in a weird way, which in a way it has been. It's been almost a month since we've been at Jack Trice Stadium, so it'll be good to be back.
True.
I made a point to get out to the tailgate lots before that Arizona game because I thought, heck, the next time we'll be back in Jack Trice, there might be snow on the ground. Who knows?
No kidding. I feel like I haven't seen Jeff Kelderman in a month either. I mean, I always run into him in the tailgating lots, so I'm excited to see Kelderman. Excited to see what tomfoolery he's up to. His latest stuff on the YouTube channel, Kelderman Trucks. He was showing off a new 6-foot lift on a 2025 Ram 350. I mean, that truck gets up there. He literally raises 6 feet. So go check out Kelderman's YouTube channel, and then you'll be able to see all the cool stuff he's able to do to trucks, everything he's able to manufacture. I'm excited to see Kelderman this weekend. He's pretty awesome, and we want to thank him for supporting us here at Cyclone Fanatic on the Beat Reporters podcast. We're going to talk mainly football today. We'll touch on a hint of basketball from Big 12 Media Days, but finally got a game, so I feel like we wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we didn't just jump right into football. And the most pressing topic right now, injuries, as has been for the last month. I feel like the main topic has been injuries, and we were told by Matt Campbell that Kyle Conradi will most likely play on Saturday. He is listed as questionable. Same goes for Kyjon Cummings-Coleman. He's also questionable. Carson Hansen's probable, which is that's not a shock. It sounds like he's at full health. But the bad news, Dominique Orange did not practice Tuesday, and he is listed as doubtful. What were your thoughts when you guys saw the injury report?
Well, my immediate thought was the interesting juxtaposition, I guess, of Conradi to questionable when Campbell said, I believe the expectation is he will play. Now, you can designate someone question. How many weeks in a row was Tom Brady questionable for the New England Patriots when they were winning all those Super Bowls? I mean, you can designate people whatever you want, but I'll take Campbell at his word that he believes that Conradi will be available. Maybe in somewhat of a limited role, though. I mean, as important as the field goal kicking has been for play calling and red zone offense, or lack thereof, has been, the kickoffs have been a real problem, and opponent's field position has been, that's been big in these two losses too. These two one-score losses, 8 points at Cincinnati and 7 points at Colorado. So be good to get him back. I agree with you, Jake, though. Dominique Orange, that's a concern. I mean, I think Zamir Hawk is a fine player. But I mean, just the presence that Dom brings when he's on his A game, against a team that's given up 7 sacks all season, 3 in the past 2 games, but you need to have him out there. I know he only played, just 10, 12 snaps or something against Colorado because he got dinged up, but that's the biggest concern to me, because I think Conradi will be back and at least be available in some capacity. And good to see Kaijon Cummings-Coleman on the list to be back too, because you need that depth at safety, and he had some fine moments before he went down as well.
The orange thing gets even more pressing, Rob, when you think about what BYU wants to do. They're the second leading, rushing team in the conference. LJ Martin is the Big 12 leader in rushing yards. So this matchup is certainly one that you really like to have orange out there. And the other thing I'll mention is, Chase Smith. Like, I know Cyclone fans, we're tired of talking about the kicking game, and hopefully a lot of those problems and math equations are out the window with Kyle Conradi back. But if he is questionable, and Campbell said Tuesday, if there was a game on Tuesday, he'd expect Conradi to play, that if there's some sort of split workload, where some guy handles kickoff duty, another handles, whatever it is, it's good to have Chase Smith out there as a potential kind of option for some of this red zone.
Can I share an opinion, or this might be a hot take? I think Iowa State should maybe consider just kicking the ball out of bounds.
I was thinking the same thing.
I still, and maybe I don't completely understand the rule, because I swear it changes every year. But 2 weeks later, I'm still perplexed by that Colorado game, why after Tyler Moore's unsportsmanlike conduct that pushed Iowa State back to the 20 or whatever, why they didn't just kick it out of bounds on that instead of kicking it a line drive. With what BYU is able to do with Parker Kingston, he's one of the best kick returners in the entire country. I don't want to risk him catching the ball at the 15 every time. I would rather surrender those 10 yards and say, hey, BYU, you're starting at the 35 every possession. That obviously changes depending on health for Chase Smith, but if you're rolling out your 4th string emergency kicker, I think you're better off just punching it out of bounds and living and eating the 10 yards.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, because we saw, and even sometimes just kicking straight up, we've seen line drives drop at the 15 and return to the 46. I think that was a Cincinnati situation. So, I mean, it's certainly not a bad. In Kingston, as you mentioned, is a guy who does so many things for them. Still hasn't thrown a touchdown pass. That's 3 in his career, so be on alert for him to be throwing the pass. He's 0 for 4 this season, but you kind of live with that, because what's been the average starting field position off of kickoffs? I didn't do the deep dive on that, but I bet it's not a lot worse than the 35. I mean, they've had some good kick coverage on some of those shorter kicks as well, which is pin teams at the 25 or in, but certainly a number that have gotten out to the 38, the 40, the 45. So it evens out a little bit.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Again, it's situational. It could depend on the wind, all that stuff, but I would be surprised if the staff hasn't at least thrown it out there and discussed it, but it does feel a little bit counterintuitive to what Iowa State has done in the past. So I'm not expecting that to happen, but
yeah,
I would at least highly consider it. As far as Conradi being back, this kind of ties in with Rocco and the pressing conversation. How much will he help if, say, his range is, hey guys, Conradi's good to go from 45 and in? Are you with me that you really think that this will help the offense immensely?
Absolutely. I think having that in the back of your pocket, I think takes so much stress and pressure off of what the first down play call needs to be, what the second down play call needs to be, what distance you feel comfortable with 3rd and short, thinking you're maybe going to have to go for it on 4th down. I think it takes away, everybody's maybe mental idea to kind of press and enforce a ball or something of that nature. When you have that, it takes so much pressure off of this whole operation that was so good. Red zone offense was the strength of the Cyclones for the first few games as they beat Iowa and are so good down there. And then we've seen it kind of deteriorate, maybe coincidentally with the kicking game getting hurt.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's Coach Campbell was asked about third down, 6 of 28 the past two games, particularly bad at Colorado. I think 2 for 12 in third down conversions, and he said it skewed a little bit because not necessarily first and second down were so bad, but even if it was third and short, they don't get it. They're going forward on fourth and short, they don't get it. Everything is altered by, the fact that you don't have a field goal kicker that you feel like can hit from beyond 35 yards. Mm-hmm. And, imagine the pressure each play every player feels under those circumstances. I mean, we've seen Rocco, and he addressed it when he talked about the extra work they did in film. Here's where I'd like you to break. Here's where I'd like you to turn on some of these routes. And maybe that's been part of the issue. They talked about miscommunication a lot in the last couple of games. But it just feels like the pressing aspect is just like everyone being afraid of making a mistake. And that's a recipe for disaster on either side of the ball or in any phase of the game. And it feels like that's been present for Iowa State. And I feel like you take some of that away when you're like, okay, we've got a kicker that if we bog down at the 28, we feel like can put 3 points on the board for us.
I don't know if you guys heard my conversation with Rocco right after media availability on Tuesday, but the last question I asked him, I went up and asked why he was pressing because I wasn't able to get a follow-up question in his initial scrum, and he had a really good answer saying, I just love this team, and I want to be the one to fix things for this team, and it puts a lot of pressure on me. And then after I turned the camera off, like, how much does that relate to your golf game? And golf is the great equalizer among people. Like, you'll see some of the world's best athletes ever be awful golfers, and it's all mental. And what Rocco said to me was, well, the problem is in golf, when I hit a bad shot, I get pissed off too. And you just have to move on to the next shot and forget about it. And I think there's a lesson to be learned in that in football, that if you miss a 2nd and 10 throw, you're not going to make the 3rd and 10 throw any easier by being mad about your 2nd and 10 throw. And I think this bye week for Rocco, whether it was playing with his Legos, whether it was hitting the golf course, getting physically healthy, it sounds like it was good for him to be able to get on the same page with his receivers. And I expect to see the best Rocco we've seen in a month on Saturday. I'd be shocked if we didn't.
He's one of those guys that he likes to get right in the game. Give him a deep ball on the first play of the game. Give him something that engages him. I think now that, it goes unsaid that Iowa State needs to win out to reach the Big 12 championship and to reach this team's goals. Maybe that's what kind of unlocks this next level of Rocco Becht that has allowed him to go on so many game-winning drives against UCF and, Texas Tech that, ultimately didn't win last year. But maybe that's the version of Rocco Becht we see with his back against the wall.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I love referring to it because I love when Taylor Mauser drops some of his knowledge, but the fact that he just flat out said that guy, if it's easy, he hates it. If it's hard, he loves it or needs it to be hard. And it's not necessarily hard to throw a deep ball, as we've seen Rocco connect on a bunch of them. It's number of 60-plus completions is among the tops in the country over the last year and a half or so. But, the challenge aspect, I think Rocco was genuinely shocked. I mean, we weren't there in Boulder, but we saw his reaction. I think he was generally shocked that they lost to Colorado. And I think that hit him really hard. And as big of a competitor as he is, as much as he loves his team, loves his program, the only way he won't be at his best is if somehow he does press too much and can't just, as Ben Bramer told me, just, the key is just play fast and free and remember to have fun at this game. And if Rocco can be in that mode, BYU, despite having a top 4 Big 12 pass defense and one of the top interception teams with 9, they can be had. I mean, you can pile up yards on them if you have the accuracy and the route running. And I think signs point to that being on the table for the Cyclones on Saturday for sure.
And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that like this game is the season. This season in a way defines success or failure. Not that they could very well lose this game and still win out at that point, but it doesn't feel likely. To me, it feels like if you walk off the field on Saturday with a win, it is still all out in front of you. No, you don't control your own destiny to get back to a Big 12 championship or anything like that, but you still see the last 4 games as, man, Arizona State, Big 12 rematch, probably going to be within a field goal spread either way. Going to be a massive game, maybe under the lights. And if you get that, then TCU's gettable, and Kansas is certainly it's still all in front. If you lose this one, though, it feels like the air is sucked out of the season, sucked out of the building, and I get the sense that the staff and the team feels that way also. I'm going to guess we get an Iowa State team that is playing like their season's on the line.
I had that exact same thought, Jake. Look, I mean, college football is a results-based business. Matt Campbell cares about the process, but he acknowledges what this, crazy sport is. And if Iowa State loses, it's going to be on its first 3-game losing streak since 2022. And if they win, the world of possibilities is right back open. You got a huge Big 12 championship rematch, as you alluded to, Jake, and everything's in front of you. Just, based on what this game happens to be.
Well, look at last season, the 2 straight losses. The Tech one was especially difficult because it was home, and I think the Cyclones were the better team that day, but that ended the 7-game winning streak to start the season. You go to Kansas. Kansas throws the first half on you offensively like Cincinnati did, 2 games ago. And you got to figure out, okay, it's very much a long shot for Iowa State to get back in Big 12 title game contention, just appearing in the game. And they go and beat Cincinnati, tight game for a while, stretch it out, go at Utah, win a tough game, and then face your biggest rival in conference, Kansas State, at home and take care of business in that one. And the dominoes fall the way you need them to fall via tiebreakers, and you're in the Big 12 title game. And then again, you don't have anywhere near the result you want. Arizona State runs roughshod over you, but you come back and win, arguably one of the more prominent, certainly, I think actually there's no argument, one of the more prominent and more high-profile non-playoff bowl games, the Pop-Tarts Bowl against Miami. So this team has the track record of being resilient. This team has the track record of performing when their back's against the wall, particularly in ways that they'll tell you they did to themselves, which they certainly have said the last couple of games. So I'm in full accord with you guys that if they get this game on track, everything starts to look possible. We didn't think Texas Tech would lose, but Texas Tech lost, granted on a backup quarterback, but, stuff happens. Other teams have injuries too, and other teams aren't perfect as well. So anything can happen on the stretch, and if you get yourself right with this one, it could very well play out like last season.
It's college football, Rob, and
yeah,
anything can happen. And I'm certainly not of the belief that this team has to go to a Big 12 championship or it's a failure. I'm not even of the belief that they've got to win 10 games for it to be a success. But I think 9 wins is kind of that line where it's a success. 8 wins is that's a good season. I don't think you're getting to 9 wins if you lose on Saturday, and that's why I think it is such a big game. And I am so excited to be back in Jack Trice Stadium. I know a lot of our listeners are too, and they're excited to be back in the tailgating lots because it's been a couple weeks since we've watched Iowa State football. It's been a month since tailgating, and what better way to bring back the tailgating spirit than hitting up our friends at farmstorymeats.com. They've got seasonal subscriptions, so you can get the best cuts for that time of year. You can get a themed meat bundle They've got a tailgate box, and you can just customize your order for the best quality and safest meat in the state of Iowa. They raise certified Chester white pork, and they work with their neighbors and friends to raise grass-fed Angus beef, pasture-raised poultry, and even bison. So if you're in Iowa and you're hitting up the tailgating lots this week, we would appreciate if you gave Farm Story Meats a look at farmstorymeats.com. We want to thank their support here on Cyclone Fanatic. Rob, you referenced it a little bit just a minute ago. Iowa State beating themselves. BYU has not beat themselves this year, and we're just on another year where BYU wins close games time in, time out. And we know that's kind of been Iowa State's MO the last 2 years also, and we haven't seen it the last 2 weeks. Who do you give the edge to if this game comes down to 3 minutes to go and it's tied or a field goal either way?
Well, as of right now, I would say BYU, because they're the ones who, yes, they did have the whatever it was 9-0 start last season, lost a couple games, and I think they won 11 games as well. But I believe they're 7-1 in their last 8 one-score games. Iowa State, I believe, was 9-1, and now has dropped to its one-score games are defined as 8 points or less in terms of a loss. They've just been, I mean, you look double overtime at Arizona. Utah was a one-score game, but I mean, they were in pretty firm control.
That wasn't a true
Holy War game.
That wasn't a true one-score game in my eyes.
But at Colorado, I mean, at times it looked like they might have been in a bit of trouble, and they pulled that one out by 3. So they seem to have, I mean, they're getting it from special teams. They're getting it from defense. Again, the turnover margin tied for the best in the league, I believe, or tied for second. Iowa State's dropped to 8 there. And I think that directly correlates to losing 2 of your best interception guys, Shantez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper. But they've got to find a way to equalize this game with, maybe they can force a fumble. I think BYU's only lost 3 all season. But it just, the Cyclones need to prove that they can be good in that area again. And as you referenced, it's so good in that area most of the past year and a half. But it just, BYU's been living in the margin successfully, and Iowa State has seen itself stumble the past couple games. So it's kind of prove it mode again, right? And if they can, and they've been so good at home this year, which I think does prove that they can be really good in those detail and precision areas. The Cyclones could do what they need to do and get back on track. It just, until BYU shows me otherwise, I'm going to give them the edge in that area.
When you lay it out like that, Rob, it's easy to see the similarities, I think, between these two programs, between these two coaches, both guys about building young men, doing it the right way, not necessarily one of these ultra-modern, transfer portal reliant, insane football teams. And I thought it was really interesting hearing Matt Campbell say on Tuesday, if my son, if I'd want him to play for one other college football coach, it'd be Kalani Sitake. The respect and kind of the similarities between those two coaches and these two programs is going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's a fascinating matchup, and it's one we saw BYU's first year in the league, but this BYU program is clearly at a different spot. The biggest thing I remember about that game 2 years ago was how much bigger Iowa State looked, how much more physical they were, how much more athletic they were at every spot. BYU has clearly completely turned over their roster since that point. They wouldn't be able to physically dominate Utah for 60 minutes if they didn't. So I don't really think you can take anything from that first Campbell-Sitake matchup. I'm intrigued. It's a fascinating game. I know it sounds like I'm on First Take, but the quarterback battle between Rocco and Bachmeier. But it's a really interesting one for me because Bachmeier hasn't seen an atmosphere close to this. He's seen his own, but he hasn't played in an opposing atmosphere, anything like this. The toughest atmosphere so far they've played in is probably Colorado. It'll be a challenge for a true freshman, but it'll also be a challenge for Iowa State's linebackers and Iowa State's D-line to bring him down. And when it is a 4th and 3, you know what they're doing. He's running it straight up the middle, and it's his best against your best. Can you bring him down? Can you avoid the BYU offensive line pushing the pile? And then for Rocco, it's play loose, play free. I'm really excited for this game on Saturday.
And listen, I think that was the whole dialogue with BYU at the start of the season, at least for me, is, okay, they have this late season quarterback switch. Like, what the heck's going to happen there? Can a young freshman step in and lead this talented offense? We know BYU has the roster. They were in a 4-way tie for the Big 12 title last year. We know they have the roster. It all comes down, in my opinion, to if Bear Bachmeier is able to be that guy in year one. And I think from what I've seen, watching him in the Holy War, some of those plays he made down late has been really impressive. I think he's answered that question. I'm a Bear Bachmeier believer.
Yeah, and his numbers are exactly the same as Rocco through the year. 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He has 8 rushing touchdowns. Rocco has 7. And that's a 3-year starting quarterback you're talking about. And in Bachmeier entering the fray after the whole deal with Retzloff, I mean, you talk about facing adversity quickly and responding with BYU. I mean, that harkens back to the similarities between how the programs are built, how they're run, how they, I'm sure, probably use that starting to get overused phrase, mudita, toward each other. It's Bachmeier's been the real deal. I will say this: over the last couple of games, he has been pressured a little bit more in terms of 3 sacks out of the total 7. In fact, 3 of the sacks came in a blowout win over Stanford. So I don't know if that was whatever that was, but 49% completion rate the last 2 games for Bachmeier, but still making the big plays. So, like we see with Rocco, when his completion rate goes down, he accounted for 4 touchdowns, though, right? I agree completely on the type of competitor. I mean, a true freshman, to be as big and physical as he is, and you mentioned the word physical and how it was so different 2 years ago, and I completely agree. That was the first word that came out of Matt Campbell's mouth and John Haycock's mouth when describing BYU. It's just how physical they are, and really on both sides of the ball. So it's going to be one of those games where I think Cyclone fans are going to be on the edge of their seats, and I'm sure BYU will have a big travel contingency. I wonder what they do when they go to opposing stadiums, though, because the tailgating experience is a lot different for a BYU fan than it is for a fan of most other teams in the league.
Did you see that story that they're, partnering with a charity and, getting shoes and I think winter coats for kids? Something really cool that BYU fans are doing there. Instead of, going to tailgate and drinking and watching games, I think they're going to tailgate, watching games, and kind of, collecting winter clothes for people in Ames. Really cool deal.
That is nice. And they hand out ice cream to people when their opposing fans come to their place, Lavelle Edwards Stadium. So nice deal. They did put together a nice feature on their TV deal, too, on the cars. Nate Carr, former great wrestler, and his sons, including, of course, David, who's in the mix to be an Olympian and all those sorts of things.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to check out everyone's work here. Cyclone Fanatic YouTube for my stuff on Saturday, cyclonefanatic.com front page for the written word from Rob, and then the Quad City Times for Ben's work. We'll certainly have a lot to talk about following this game. We also are in the heart of crossover season, and I went down to Big 12 basketball media days yesterday, and it was weird because I was talking to Taman about this, and I just said we do Big 12 football media day pretty much 2 months before the season, a month and a half before the season. So it truly is the first time that we're talking to the coach and a few of the players since the spring. Whereas basketball, we already had Iowa State media day. We had a pre-Creighton exhibition availability, and then we talked to the team right after the Creighton game. So I treated this mostly like it was just another Iowa State basketball availability. I was more interested in what I would hear from other coaches and other players. So I'll just I'll just rattle off a few takeaways and we can bounce off each other a little bit. I think the most pressing topic was the recent addition of a G League Ignite player to Louisville. Kelvin Sampson had some strong words about this. Scott Drew called it ridiculous. Bill Self, I'm sure you all know his stance on it as well. I thought Sampson had the best story about it. So he said that he didn't even know about it until his good friend Tom Izzo went on a rant about it 2 or 3 days ago. So Kelvin called up his son Kellen and said, "Did you know that this was a rule?" And Kellen said, "Yeah, I've already been talking to a guy." So Kelvin is like, one, I'm out of touch because I'm clearly out of touch with recruiting because I didn't know it was a rule, and my son is already recruiting a player like this, but he still said it's ridiculous. It goes against where college basketball should be. What's your thoughts on the situation?
I think the can of worms has long been opened, and this is just the result of it. I mean, where does this stop? The NCAA continues to lose leverage, lose power. Every time they go to court, they lose. At some point, man, like it's going to be the Wild West all over again. Anything goes.
Yeah, I think we talked about self-inflicted wounds in football. The NCAA has a lot of self-inflicted wounds by trying to preserve the power structure that they'd had for so long. And again, losing court case after court case speaks to that. And these are natural outgrowths of the result of that short-sightedness, I would say. It is, but Amy Pollard like to say, and a number of other people, it is what it is. It sounds like a vacuous statement, but I think it completely sums this up. I mean, look, at some point, some things will be reined in and the picture will be clearer, but as of now, that's not the case, and nothing surprises me. So I guess, the quote unquote outrage is, I always find a little bit laughable too. I mean, Izzo and Kelvin Sampson have been in this thing for a long time when they were the only ones making money, along with the NCAA and TV. As I said, it is what it is.
It's just difficult to find how gray the line should be, or how gray the line can be. Because Iowa State, they brought in Dominicus Plata. He's a 21-year-old. He's been playing professional ball in Germany, but he was playing in like tier 3 professional ball. How comparable is that to the G League? We know that the G League is probably the second highest level of basketball on earth. You could argue that against the EuroLeague. Either way, it's right up there. Should players be able to go do that for 2 or 3 years and still come back to college? I would think no, but at the same time, do I think guys should have been able to play 8 years in college basketball? No. Ben said it best. The toothpaste is kind of out of the tube at this point.
And we'll say this, I mean, a lot of these coaches are going to get up there and posture and say they hate it, and that's completely within their right. But the good coaches are going to be the ones who accept it and do it. Get out to the Iowa Wolves games, guys. Who knows what 26-year-old talent could be out there ready to help your college basketball team.
And so the way I understand it is the only requirement is the player couldn't have played college ball. So you're looking at those G League Ignite teams, which, to be fair, I think that has fallen off quite a bit. I know that was a big deal 3 or 4 years ago when you had the Thompson twins, Jalen Green. You had several players who were just going the G League Ignite route. And even like Omaha Ballou, that was in his top 3 when he was choosing between Iowa State. So it's not like there's a massive pool to pick out of guys that go straight from high school to the G League, but there's certainly going to be, especially the guys that aren't good enough to go high school, G League, top 10 pick in the NBA. There's going to be 5 or 6 guys a year that get on that team, don't play a ton, and like, you know what? I'm just going to take my talents to Louisville, or I'm going to take my talents to Team X, and those players will probably be really, really highly coveted players.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, is that in the best interest of the player? I would say it is.
Yeah,
Give them another opportunity, and
either that or go
juxtapose
overseas, probably.
Yeah, I mean, and contrast that with what it used to be. Where you're more or less chained to a program. Coaches could come and go as they please. The transfer rules are sit out or else. I mean, they could say this is unrecognizable, but it's unrecognizable in a way that gives quote unquote kids better opportunities. If we chose to go the pro route, didn't really work out. Well, as long as I, satisfy these conditions, I can still go and do the college thing. I mean, I think that's ultimately a good thing. And I can understand dyed in their wool coaches being, but yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. I mean, again, nothing is surprising anymore. And if it means more opportunities for young men who need them, I'd say, more power to it.
I was talking to Scott Drew, and I was just asking him how he feels like he's adapted or needed to adapt in this new era. And he pretty much said he hasn't been able to because he doesn't feel like things have stayed the same from year to year. And he made it sound to me like he's always playing catch up, and he's trying to figure different things out on a year by year basis. And I think one that goes to show why TJ Altsberger's been so successful, because as the game has changed, yes, TJ has had to change a couple things, but his philosophy for guys he's bringing in has mostly stayed the same. And I thought that perspective from a national championship winning coach was pretty interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing where I get where the coaches are coming from. I mean, they went from being extremely structured, exactly what the rules are, to what's this gray area? What's this one? How is this going to play out? How is it? And of course, it's always shaded by, again, will we lose another court case? And I think that's got to be frustrating. To put a cap on this part of the discussion, I could see how that would be extremely frustrating for a successful coach such as Kelvin Sampson, Scott Drew, Tom Izzo, et al. To try to navigate, not really knowing what the rules are going to be from year to year.
To get into more of a Big 12 discussion, I can't imagine not just frustrated, but I'm guessing Scott Drew's very happy to see his former player VJ Edgecombe light it up in his NBA debut with 35 points. But I'm imagining he's thinking, like, I won a national championship 4 years ago. I had this guy on my roster last year, and we still couldn't figure it out. We were mediocre. To me, it feels like that Baylor program is just in a very, very stagnant place. And I don't know how they get out of it if they've got guys like Edgecombe and they're still just okay.
Yeah, good point. He did it against my Celtics too. That's how I was shaking my head. He gave him a chance at the end by missing a couple free throws, but Peyton Pritchard couldn't convert.
Jake, how'd Taman look? You got a chance to talk to him? I mean, was he moving around a little bit better? From my observation at Creighton, he was still pretty stiff last week. How's he looking? And maybe did you get any more intel on what his recovery looks like?
Yeah, so that by all accounts sounds like he's going to be good to go for the season opener. I would hope that means on a pitch count, like, hey, Taman, we don't need you for 40 minutes. And he was moving pretty good. The problem with Taman is he's always going to walk with a bit of a hitch because, I mean, the guy has just been through it all. So that's kind of his natural. I've noticed that even when he's healthy, is his walk after a game or his walk just like after a mid-morning press conference is he's stiff and he's hurt. He is a soldier, just one tough dude. I thought maybe the most interesting thing that I picked up talking to TJ and Taman was TJ used the example of putting a quarterback jersey on him in practice and finding the balance, right, between how do we keep Taman fresh? Because that's what I asked. How do you keep Taman fresh for March when you know how he plays? And he said, we're going to do what we do. We're not going to walk through and expect to come out and be physical, but at the same time, it's being in constant communication with each other that we don't necessarily need you diving on the floor for loose balls in practice. And that's what Taman told me. He said, if there's two other guys diving on the ground for a loose ball in practice, maybe I don't need to do it. Or maybe I don't need to initiate contact going for a foul. And he said that he's matured that way from his freshman and sophomore year to where he's just like, I'm going to do that all the time. I'm going to practice how I play. But I thought it was really telling. He told me the coaching staff knows what I'm going to do on the game floor, and he doesn't feel the need to prove that on the practice floor anymore. And that should be a giant sigh of relief across Central Iowa and Ames, because I just get horrified at the thought of Taman Lipsey at practice practicing the way that he plays.
Yeah, we hear that from football all the time, though, right? One of the reasons they've fallen off is maybe they don't practice like they play, but I think at the same time, we know they're judicious with Rocco in practice. We know they're judicious with guys who are banged up. So I think that's kind of I don't want to say a platitude, but I think it's much truer for younger players, to your point, Jake, that guys need to have those reps, and those reps need to mirror game time, from practice time to game time, whereas a guy that's played as much basketball as Taman Lipsey, yeah, you can ease up a little bit in practice. We see it in the NBA all the time. Guys are held back quite a bit just so they're able to full go, 81 games a year. So that's a really good point. And if he can do it mentally, I think could be really huge for them, because the last thing they need, we saw what it meant not having him down the stretch last season.
I'll just say what I've seen a lot of fans talking about and saying out loud is, even if Taman Lipsey is mostly back for FDU, I don't know if I'd play him. Killian Torrey, when you look at where Iowa State wants to be in February going into March, I don't think it's going to matter a whole lot if Taman Lipsey played against FDU, even on a pitch count. It'll be interesting to see as we talk to Otzelberger and, we get another look at this team Sunday against Northwestern, kind of where they're at with that.
Yeah, and the 4 to 6 week timetable that he initially was put on, the end of that 6 weeks is that Monday against Fairleigh Dickinson. So it doesn't sound like they'd be rushing him back, but at the same time, I agree with you. Maybe throw him out there for 5-10 minutes against FDU, get him in a game setting before I guess they've got 2 games before Mississippi State. Get him out for 5-10 minutes in one of those games, get some of that game feel back, and then hopefully you're able to roll him out as close to 100% as possible against Mississippi State up in Sioux Falls on November the 10th.
Yeah, I can see both those scenarios being wise. And part of it comes down to, like Rocco, right? He wants to go back in a game no matter how much his bell got rung before. I'd imagine Taman is very much the same way. Wants to play. And you can temper that, though. I think the maturity factor with Taman now, as a senior, just be like, hey, we got to think about best interests and remember what you felt like last season when you couldn't go and how much he tried to go when he could barely move. Any wear and tear you can prevent. So maybe the happy medium is, hey, get him a few minutes and then just, all right, I've got that feel back a little bit. Or, hey, if you don't have to play Taman, it's okay. You're going to have lots of opportunities to get out there. But again, the type of competitor that he is, he probably is chomping at the bit to play in a real game or any game. Probably would love to play against Northwestern in an exhibition. But we'll see how it plays out, I suppose.
I've got one more takeaway, and that was Mila Momcilovic told me why he's watching Steph Curry film. And on the surface, that sounds like, oh man, that seems like a lofty goal. Who's going to shoot like Steph Curry? But what he told me he was doing was he's watching how Steph sets teammates up with screens, and how Steph's off-ball screens that he sets himself lead to him getting open shots. So he talked about how this week he's been focusing on how he can just run around and find himself more open looks. And I thought that was an encouraging way for Milan to maybe walk his way into one or two easier shots a game.
Yeah, one of the best off-ball movers of all time, Steph Curry. And, we've talked about Milan's days of open threes in the corner are over. He's going to have to go hunting.
Yeah, and one way to hunt them even better there, you can get an open but deeper three. We see Steph do that all the time, right? And it looks like, oh my God, he's shooting from the logo, but it is a good shot for him. If Milan can make those good shots for him, that maybe that does unlock that extra 3-pointer per game that they're going to want from him. So that's very positive that I think he's always been a student for the game, but he's just deep in that role for himself.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that too, I asked him what the challenge of that is, knowing the answer, and it's the conditioning that it takes with that, and it's the attitude to say, I'm going to do this all game, and that has to take away something. Does it take away from rebounding a little bit? Because you can be in incredible shape and still be a little bit limited if you're moving nonstop. So I'll be interested to see, is that a thing where it's, hey, 10 possessions a game, if we're running a set for me, my entire purpose is just going to be running around screens, setting screens for others, slipping through, or is it going to truly try and be every possession down the floor? And I would guess it'd be more of the first option, so then that way it's not taking away from defensive intensity, taking away from rebounding, because, again, the human body is only so limited, and that's why you don't see Steph playing lockdown defense every single minute of every single night in the regular season, because you physically can't when you're moving without the ball as much as he is.
Absolutely. Awesome,
guys. Well, we might as well just have a beat reporter's sleepover at Hilton Coliseum on Saturday night. We'll all be working until 11, close to midnight or so, and then we'll be right back up in Hilton Coliseum 12 hours later for the exhibition against Northwestern. So be sure to check out Ben and Rob's great work, and we'll be back with the beat reporters here in the Northwest Bank Studios next Thursday.